As we take the time to look back, we can see how God was orchestrating His magnificent plan for our future. It all began 43 years ago when a young man stole a Bible. After having read it, he knew he couldn't keep it to himself and passed it on to my grandmother. Both she and my father read and believed. A few years after that, God brought my parents together and allowed them to see the need for a place of education, a place where pastors and leaders would have the opportunity to study, as most had been put into positions without prior training. So my parents, Jorge and Lynn Mogrovejo, with me, their 3-month-old baby, left Ecuador for the United States in order to pursue theological studies so they could return to Ecuador and start a seminary. 7 years later, our family of now 5 moved back to Ecuador, and in 1995, the doors of SEMBEC, the Biblical Evangelical Seminary of Cuenca, were opened. I watched intently as my parents and others worked hard to open the seminary and then teach. With the help of God, the seminary flourished. In 2003, it was my turn to study. I attended a Christian college in Indiana and received an associate's degree in youth ministry and biblical studies, and then a bachelor's degree in psychology and Christian counseling. By then, the seminary had bought land and was completing construction of their very own building. At the seminary graduation of 2011, one of the graduates invited his brother, Napoleon. That was the beginning of our story. We were married the following year. Napo had worked in ministry for most of his life, including youth leader, worship director, and part of a traveling music team, among other things. He had not had the opportunity for theological studies, and this was where his seminary education began. In 2015, he graduated from SEMBEC. At that point, we knew God was calling us to full-time ministry, but He had not yet shown us His plan. We moved from Ecuador to Virginia with our 2 boys, David and Benjamin, and soon found ourselves working in full-time ministry. I, with children at a church daycare, and Napo as the newly ordained pastor of a Hispanic ministry. As we worked, we began to see the hand of God preparing us to return to Ecuador. His plan was for us to open a school, a haven where we would be able to plant the seeds in the hearts of those He would call to ministry. The evangelical Christian population has grown in Ecuador in the last 20 years from 1.5% to about 14%. Most children go to public school, but the education level is so low that upon graduation, only about half are able to pass the test to get into college. God has called us to open a school with Christ-centered education that would transform the minds of children and widen their horizons, providing Bible-based education and Christian values that are slowly being erased from our world. This level of education will not only permit them to succeed in life, but also prepare them for a future in ministry. You too can be part of reaching these children, the future leaders of Ecuador and the world.